Hello everyone and welcome back to Dragalia Foundry, a fan channel where everything Dragalia Lost can be found. This video is going to contain my first look at Enter the Kaleidoscape, our new roguelike mode where you progress through 50 floors of the Kaleidoscape labyrinth, try to reach the end and defeat the final boss. You can bring any adventure in your collection to this mode, and it's side content from the main game, so your progress there does not really matter for taking on this challenge. It's a really fun new mode that has been highly anticipated, was data mined 3 years ago, at least the name was, as potential upcoming content, and to finally have this acknowledged this year and released is super awesome. I enjoyed my first run very much, so we're going to take a look at that in this video, and just to say, this was a lot more robust than I was expecting for side content from the main game of Dragalia Lost. It doesn't matter your progression in the main game if you want to take this on, and I think that's something really cool about this if you're into roguelikes. You could see that there's memories and lore you can unlock. There's treasure trade here with good items that are going to help you in the main game, including sunlight stones, some omnisite even. So I think there's real incentives to play this. You collect two types of materials, that red one and the purple one, Dusk and Dawn Amber, to unlock these just by playing the mode. There's weapon skins. Overall, I was really impressed with this. It's a robust offering, had a lot of fun. We're going to take a look at my first run together, but I did want to just check out the shop, see what else is available. You can even get legend materials from this. So there's a lot to like. It is a little bit on the longer side, so you're going to want to consider that. But I think that as you upgrade your Fafnir, it's sort of a roguelite in the sense that you can get these permanent upgrades after you do each run, and I think as you do that, it's going to start to feel like an overall smoother and quicker experience. So starting off, I wanted to sort my adventures by date that I got them, and as you can see, Eleonora is the first adventure I summoned, second adventure I had after the prince, so I decided to go with her for my first clear of this. The one area where your permanent progression plays in is with the shared skills. You also get kind of a whale bonus there with the Fafnir. You have 3 choices. Your Fafnir is your helper in this mode, so I chose the healing skill. But these shared skills do come from what you have unlocked in your permanent collection. So you get a little bit of an advantage by being able to start with better shared skills. But in 50 floors, you can probably save these for the end, but you're going to get a lot of other shared skills you can use along the way too. So I decided to go for healing and dispel, and then I embarked upon my quest. A lot of the floors in this are going to be longer, winding routes where you fight a lot of smaller enemies and collect the loot that they drop, like weapons, wormprints, and shared skills. So I'm not going to show all of those because it would just be too much. It took me about 3.5 hours to get through the mode, even though it was only about 2 hours and 20 minutes on the play counter at the end. So don't have time to show everything, but kind of want to just cut through and show the highlights. So here on floor 3 was the first boss fight that I faced, and it was against the Manticore. Ended up battling the Manticore again on floor 10, I believe. And one thing to point out is just cool arena, cool music. The vibes in this mode are immaculate. They change from floor to floor. You have different soundtracks, you have different scenery, biomes. Sometimes it might be the snow, sometimes it might be the mountains, it might be an interior room like this one. And after every boss, you have a choice of a dragon to recruit. They all confer passive benefits, and you can shapeshift into them a limited number of times, so I went with Fubuki there for some passive benefits. Now, I found this to be interesting. This was sort of the next kind of different floor that I found that wasn't just enemy battles. This was kind of like a treasure room. So a really nice reprieve here on floor 12, where I got new shared skills, new weapons, and wormprints that I could then manage my inventory and equip, choose what I wanted to take with me. The next big boss fight I had was against Valix, and there is some randomization, so I've seen players fight Harl, Lapis, and many more. So I think that's kind of cool too. These are boss fights that are off the beaten path. They're not the ones that you're farming constantly in the main content of Dragalia Lost, like the High Dragons or the Agito. The mini bosses they're true bosses. There are some other things that are kind of more like mini bosses, but these like lesser bosses on the lower floors, there's a good variety of them. You can even fight the fish that was in Ebisu's raid, which I think is kind of hilarious as like kind of a gimme boss fight. what I didn't expect was back-to-back boss fights. So I don't know if this always happens on floor 20 and floor 21, but it happened to me where I fought Valix and then I fought Ronzel. So I'm not sure if those two are guaranteed to be boss fights or this was just random coincidence, but yeah, had the back-to-back. And my strategy being a ranged character was honestly to play keep away and just try to take as little damage as possible. So a lot of my progression through the main floors as well was essentially rolling, force striking, and using skills. One thing that is a little bit comforting in this mode that makes it a little easier is that your damage does not progress floor to floor. So if you make it to the end of the floor, you are going to fully heal for the next floor. I think that's probably for the best with this mode because the Fafnir heals you over time anyway, and if you didn't heal floor to floor, essentially what that would mean is you just stall out. If you have the Fafnir healing ability, you just stall out at the end of a floor until you fully heal anyway. So I think it works out well that damage isn't permanent. Now, having said that, for boss fights, you still need to be mindful of what shared skills you have, and that icon in the bottom right is my shared skill menu, because you can have so many equipped, you click on the menu and then pick the skill you want to use. As well as what dragons you have in some cases, or at least just having dragons to be able to tank. But there are some interesting skills here. As you can see, Phoenix is available with her healing regeneration powers, so I thought this might come in handy for a future boss fight, so I decided to take her here as my next dragon selection. And then continuing on, this is more of a mini boss that I referred to. So I found this enemy off the beaten path of just one of the longer type of rooms, and it seems like these enemies that have a red shroud, you can find Templars, there's some other variants, there's like a troll smith that you can find, a pumpkin king. They're all harder than normal enemies, but they give a lot of experience points if you defeat them, and they're out of the way so you don't have to take them on if you don't want to. You can see there, I leveled up right away, and then on to my next boss battle. So my next boss battle was Thor. This was actually the first time in my run where unfortunately I lost. I got defeated by Thor. But it also made me realize how the continue system works in this. And I think it's pretty generous, all things considered. So you have 10 continues per day, and they reset every day. So there's a little bit of a risk reward. If you run out of continues, you are going to get half the amount of amber, and you're not going to get any special worm prints. But if you have continues, you can keep trying. So I kind of like that. It means your run isn't completely failed. It's pretty forgiving, and you might not need them. The further you progress with this, the more you learn these boss fights. But personally, I thought I was super good here, and little did I expect, oh yeah, that AoE hits the entire screen, or even if it didn't, I was right there. And this one hits the entire screen, I'm pretty sure. So what I probably should have done is Dragon Tank, but that wasn't even my biggest mistake. This was my biggest mistake, because I just got Aura'd to Oblivion. And honestly, it happened to me again, so I used 2 continues on Thor here. You can also spend your continues to suspend progress, I believe. Okay, there's another random boss, the Pumpkin King. But yeah, you can suspend your progress and continue in the mode. Then on floor 33, Valix again for some reason, so was not expecting this, but did fight Valix twice, which I thought was kind of interesting. I guess floor 33 was just another boss fight, and maybe there was a random chance it could have been somebody else. But there is an option in the mode, once you progress through for the first time past level 30, to start subsequent runs from floor 30. Sorry, I said level 30, but I meant floor 30. Your level is on your character, level 63, you can see on Eleonora, but floor is your progress in the dungeon. But yeah, you can start on floor 30. You're just going to start with random equipment, so it's a little risky, but it probably will save you a lot of time, especially if you're playing with a stronger character. And I think that makes the mode just the right length. When starting all the way from floor 1, it does feel really long. As you can see here, I'm fighting another mini-boss, this giant enemy crab. But starting from level 30, I felt like I got a really good diversity of types of encounters. I got a good amount of bosses. I still had plenty of time to get the gear that I wanted to take on the final boss. So I still had plenty of time for like optimization and sort of min-maxing my equipment without it being as much of a slog. The longer floors, especially earlier on when you have lower damage, do just take quite some time to clear. And I think the mode is best when there are about 20 levels. So you can only skip to floor 30 up to 3 times per day. And I do recommend that if you're trying to clear out the treasure trade for this month, because we only have a limited number of days left in December, and there's some really good rewards in there. There are some permanent endeavors that you can do right now by clearing the Kaleidoscape with up to 10 adventures, I believe, that are going to give you a lot of amber to trade for items in the treasure trade. So by skipping floors, that's probably going to be an effective strategy to get all that grinding done before the new year. Anyway, I wanted to just show this floor because this is the first time I had an encounter like this where instead of progressing to the end of a level, I just had to defeat all the enemies. And I thought this was a very refreshing change of pace. I only found 2 of these, but I would have loved to see like 3 of these. They did get kind of hard. The second one in particular was kind of challenging because it had some void enemies. But I love this. I love when there was like, one long floor to like 2 or 3 shorter floors. Like that felt like a good ratio to me, since a lot of the time in the longer floors is just spent on traversal and slowly kiting and whittling down enemies, at least with the ranged play style. So this one was really a breath of fresh air to me. Obviously you get a lot of loot from defeating these enemies too, which is super sweet. So you can then go through and kind of customize, pick your loadout that you want. It's usually not too complicated. I didn't face any like really hard trade-offs. I generally pick the weapons with the higher strength, and same with the Worm Prince. In a few cases there were some synergistic ability options and opportunities, like something that had Poison Punisher for Eleonora. Excuse me. But nice, we cleared the level there. But in general, the build aspect wasn't like super sophisticated or anything like that. So here we get onto the next fight, and it's a similar floor to the last one. Excuse me while I get a little bit of water here. Okay, there we go. That's much better. So once again, just kind of strafing, trying to get away from these enemies. But on this one, I actually got pretty close to dying. And up until now, I had not really used any of my shared skills. I used one tiny dragon last time just to try it out, but was kind of saving those, thinking that if I had extra at the end of the run, maybe I could convert them into extra amber, extra permanent rewards essentially, but ended up having to use them against the final boss, as we'll get into later. Interestingly, these floors, there are healers, and healers are another element of this that I think makes it kind of fun. Like, the enemy variety is pretty significant. When there are maps with healers, especially multiple, you need to be able to deal enough damage to them to take them out. Otherwise, you're just going to be able to heal one another. So that's one aspect of things. Another aspect is there are some enemies which, instead of being dealt regular damage, they rely upon hit count to defeat, essentially. So like you can only deal 1 damage to them per hit. Looks like I did end up using a healing shared skill there, but not healing for that much. So I guess I decided didn't want to waste my shared skills or something. In subsequent runs, like I did 1 other run, or 2 other runs, 1 other one that cleared, ended up being a little bit more aggressive with the shared skill tablet use, because it seems like you don't take them with you. Essentially, you're going to lose them on the floor, at end floor. So yeah, I ended up taking on these enemies. But there are some, like I said, that you have to rely on hit count to defeat. There are some that will put up barriers that you have to force strike or dispel to get through. So depending on the adventure you're playing, what poses a challenge to you could differ greatly. Like if you're a healer, your main challenge, if you're not a DPS healer, is probably going to be your damage output. If you're an axe adventurer, your main challenge might be dealing with those enemies that only take 1 damage per hit, because the axes in Dragalia Lost don't really have a high hit count like the bows do. So to mitigate that, you can pick your shared skill loadout in such a way that you have shared skills that are going to help you with what you're trying to work on. There was my next boss fight at level 40, and toward the end is where you get to some of the bosses that are the more permanent bosses in the game, like High Mercury there, and thankfully we were able to take her out and then pick a dragon. And then on level 45, Kayan. So the Agito bosses are the endgame bosses of the Kaleidoscape. What I didn't know going into things was that the boss that you fight on level 45 is actually a standard difficulty preview of the boss you're going to fight on level 50 in the expert difficulty. So I thought I was really happy here. I was like, okay, I got Kaiyan in level 45, so I'm probably going to get another boss in level 50, and I'll be good. I can feel free to use all of my Dispel shared skills, as you saw me use one of them there, and for the end, I'll be good, because I already fought Kaiyan. Little did I know that actually, that's not the case. This is to tell you who you're going to fight on floor 50, and therefore give you an opportunity for the next 4 floors to pick up the requisite shared skills that you want and pick up the loadout that you want, essentially now with the knowledge of what boss you're going to fight. So I did not beat this difficulty of Kaiyan on my first try, and was a little scared here about having to use a lot of continues, but I was still thinking in my head, even if I have to, well, at least I've already fought Kaiyan. I did not know I was going to have to fight him again, so yeah, that ended up being quite the challenge at the end of the run. But what ended up killing me before was essentially this fight for survival mechanic with other attacks layered on top with only one adventure and without having paralysis res, because I didn't actually take it at my last opportunity, not expecting I was going to fight Kaiyan after fighting High Mercury. Well, this was a dicey one. So it was a longer clear, it took me a while to get through, but just tried to whittle down here and not expose myself, not get to too low of a health or anything, or take unnecessary attacks. So I think I died to Thor twice, and then I died here twice as well. Had another Dispel, but after this had mostly heals. Ended up having more heals to Dispel ratio than I really would have wanted. I'm getting close to break, but it feels like my damage was just really low. I think I had a kind of a weaker weapon at this point in time, and it took me a while before I got a weapon that had a very high strength. Once I broke, I was tempted to Dragon just for some extra damage, but decided, okay, now let me go for it here, because I just don't want to take too many of these unavoidable hits. I probably could have been a little bit more liberal with that, since it would let me use some of my heals, some of which included overdamage, but in the end I was kind of glad that I ended up saving them for the master difficulty of Kaiyan, albeit unknowingly. So this is the type of moment that I talked about that killed me a couple times here, where I just got locked between his spins and that barrier, so I did want to have a dragon for that, and thankfully had one. Now, Kaiyan has maximized his resistance to poison, so I can no longer poison him, and I got one of these other barriers to deal with to boot, so there just wasn't a great way around that. I don't know if I should have walked into the paralysis or not, but that's what I ended up doing there. I was hoping I'd be able to just roll through the cage and get out of the purple area, but it did not work at all, so things got super close here. Anyway, as far as other impressions on the mode, as you can see, I'm kind of just doing my best to kind of micromanage on this fight and not die at this point. As I said, I think it's on the longer side, but the fact that you get permanent progression with the Fafnir upgrades, I think is going to make this super fun in the future. Because it's so long, I don't know if this is going to lend itself the best to recorded videos, but I think for those of you out there that stream Dragalia Lost or interested in stuff like that, I could see this being a really fun mode to stream, like picking random characters and going on runs, or letting chat vote on runs like that. If my setup were to allow for it, that'd be something I'd be interested in, but right now I just don't know if I have the time or the space to really be able to do that, unfortunately. Having said that, you never know. Maybe if you like this Kaleidoscape content, I'll put some future runs out there. There's just so many random things you can find in this mode. I was playing as Leonidas and found 6 giant enemy crabs, which was kind of crazy. I think that stuff like that is super cool to discover, so I do plan on continuing to play this. And you can see here that my second treasure room was actually right before the final boss. This isn't guaranteed to be the case, so this was just a really lucky opportunity to gear up with my exact loadout that I wanted here for the final boss. So I didn't know at this point that I was going to face Kaiyan. I was still expecting it could be anybody, but I did know as Eleonora that I wanted to have Dispel and Healing, because that wasn't in my main kit. So I'm trying out different Wormprint combinations. I decided to add some Affliction Resistance, because I feel like that could be important depending on the boss I'm fighting. I have a lot of shared skills to choose from as well, so kind of thinking about how I want to use those. I think for all of the Agito bosses, Dispel and Healing are both useful, so at least to the end game, I think those are the kind of skills that you probably want to hoard. Maybe you don't need the Dispel, maybe you need more healing if your character is one that already has Dispel. But you can see this is kind of what I ended up going with. So I had 3 heals at the top. I believe I brought in that 4th Akasha heal. And then I put another Dispel over the Wedding Aoi. And not knowing who I was going to fight, I left the Luca because I like the long iframes with the Dispel. But little did I know that I'd be fighting Kaiyan, and there are actually some really vulnerable moments where if you use that long iframe Luca skill, you could be caught in a purple. So here we go. Accidentally enabled and disabled the combat log, but this was it. This was the final floor. So to next floor, and of course Kaiyan just like wiped the clock with me many times. This was the closest I got. I got to my last continue opportunity. And honestly, I didn't know if I was going to make it, but that one last run mentality kicked in. I decided to go for it. I was out of continues for the day. This was the first day that Kaleidoscape was available, so I really didn't know how this was going to work. But there's even a warning that if you fail without continues, you're out of luck. You're going to get fewer rewards. You're going to have to start over. You can't retry the current floor. So this was pure desperation, final gambit type of situation. I'm trying to apply everything I learned on my subsequent or my previous failures to try time my dispels appropriately, not get locked in a skill at a bad time, use my heals at the right time in order to survive this fight essentially. And our damage was actually going pretty well this time around with me using these 4 strikes to hit through Kai and get to some of the orbs. That one kind of unintentionally hitting that orb with the skill. But because my dispels are limited, I wanted to do that, and here was one of the first big mistakes that I made. I decided to become a dragon, but I was accidentally tapping to attack right where Mercury's face was, and I was still tapping when I pulled up my dragon menu, so I accidentally became Mercury, which probably not the best dragon form in the world, and didn't really provide any sort of utility at that point in time. And would have definitely been better to just like dragon tank this attack at least, because that almost killed me. Luckily I still have some healing up, and every time I do use healing, I also get over damage, which increases my damage output. Now I decided to go for the Dispel here. Luckily I had a Dispel weapon, which was super needed for me, but this was something that had killed me several times before. The fact that Kaiyan puts up a shield and then does that purple interior attack against the Kimono Luca shared skill, or weapon skill in my case, that is just a super nasty combination. Can easily kill you if you're in there. So yeah, then I have to deal with another Dispel. Checking my menu, okay, it's available. And try to use that as soon as possible in case he goes for the purple again, which he did again. So luckily I rolled out of the way, and I'm just rolling, trying to get my hit count up there. Now Kai's poison resistance is maxed out, which means my damage is not going to be good for the rest of the battle. And essentially just trying to deal as much damage as possible, because my only issue in previous runs wasn't survival. I also had an issue of just dealing enough damage, even if I survived. So at this point I'm trying to unload skills. Looks like a pretty good damage output during break, but I decided not to dragon, seeing that I only have a little more than 1 dragon available, because some of these purple attacks in past runs just killed me. A couple in a row could just kill me, so I felt like I needed the dragon just to be safe. Just using my skills on cooldown once again. And I do think Kaiyan is kind of like the hard boss. You know how in roguelites or roguelikes, at the end of the game, like sometimes you fight different boss patterns or combinations or different bosses, and depending on your build in many games, like certain bosses are harder than others. I feel like Kaiyan just kind of like the bad RNG boss. Like for most adventures, this is going to be the hardest ending, and if you get Ciela or Volk or something, it's going to be a lot easier for you to clear with that adventure than if you get Kaiyan. That's like the one that you don't want to see that might end your run. If you have some Dispel built in and you're prepared to deal with all the purple attacks, you might be fine. And luckily we were fine here, but it took all of our continues for the day to be able to get the clear. So feels like there was an adequate amount of risk, which I liked. And just the shields with this man. So obnoxious. But we have another big purple attack coming here. And I decided not to use my dragon because I felt like, okay, I have enough HP. I'm going to risk it. And then I don't know what I was thinking there. Went inside, used my heal. Should have just stayed outside, but I didn't think he was going to purple right away, so I just wanted to position myself to continue with my damage, being nearby him. There, used the skill to iframe, and used another skill. And there's only about 1 minute left, but I'm dealing very low damage, so I'm hoping that I can get the clear. So we have this purple attack again, and at this point I was like, okay, it's time. I almost have a second dragon charged up. Let me use my dragon to tank this. But then, of course, Kaiyan goes shields up again, and having that weapon skill was super essential. Luckily for me, this also happened to be my weapon with my highest strength stat as well. But use the heal there just in case to survive. Kaiyan's going purples again. Now I don't have any more shared skills available to me at all, so I'm hoping I can unleash my skills and that'll be enough to defeat Kaiyan. But if he puts up a shield here, I'm going to be stuck for a while. And yes, thankfully, that arrow through the heart of Kaiyan. And that was the end of my first Kaleidoscape run. So it was a very significant challenge. It was very fun to take on. I hope you enjoyed this video and hope you've been liking the Kaleidoscape mode as well. As far as the rewards, besides the treasure trade, the other thing you get are these new portrait worm prints, which you can see you get 5 of them for clearing 50 floors. If you clear fewer, you get fewer of them, and they tend to have less valuable abilities. If you clear all 50 floors, these worm prints actually have 2 abilities. They're very strong. They go into a special worm print slot that is newly available as of the release of the latest version update and can allow for a lot of customization on your characters. The 2 abilities appear to be random, so if you do multiple runs with the same character, you might get different combinations. They can be element locked or element and weapon locked, and if they are, they tend to have higher payout. You can see that's the amount of Dusk Amber and Dawn Amber that I got after this one run. I've seen it be pretty common that you get like 600 purples and 5,000 to 6,000 of the red. There's another element to this. Once you get your first clear, you can send adventurers that you're not actively using on expeditions to get like 5,000 red materials and some weaker worm prints for you. So you can see the expeditions menu unlocked there. And you could do this every 8 hours or so that's another way of farming up materials. So let's go ahead and collect our endeavors. These are the normal endeavors that are available right now that I think will help you clear the treasure trade for this month. And then for future months, you're going to have to play this mode if you want to get some of those juicy items. So let's go ahead and collect our normal endeavors. Got a lot of nice Kaleidoscape Amber there. And I decided to go for the Sunlight Stone first. I'm probably going to try and clear out the monthly trade if I can, at least of the special items. I want that Omnisite for sure. And the Champion's Testaments, the other items are also precious, so I want to go for them. Maybe not the Knight's Testaments and Damascus Ingot, I might skip those. You can see we have these memories unlocked now too, just to click into one of them really quick. And the memory unlocks thankfully don't use Amber, they just require certain conditions like clearing with a certain number of characters to get. And then the Fafnir upgrades. Now I have some Amber that I could spend to permanently make this mode easier for myself and make it so hopefully in future runs I'm less prone to almost losing the entire thing on the very last opportunity. Anyway, I think that is pretty much going to do it. You could see floors cleared, 50 for Eleonora, as well as that skip menu of 3 that you could skip to floor 30 if you want to. I think I'll go ahead and collect my Wormite here. I'll set up a party for an expedition so you can see how that works, and then we will call it a day. Definitely let me know in the comments below what you've thought of the Kaleidoscape mode so far. Very curious to hear your opinions. If you are a fan of roguelikes, if you're not, how is it as far as the length and duration that it takes to play through the mode? Were you able to get some clears with some of your favorite adventurers or adventurers you don't see too often? So definitely let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. Be very curious to hear. It's finally here. After 3 years, Kaleidoscape is real. It's in Dragalia Lost. It's a permanent roguelike mode. It's significant side content. That is going to do it for today though, everyone. So thank you as always for watching. Take care, and I'll see you next time.